Secretary of the Board. I think that's correct, Sandy. All right, yes. So, and I am extremely pleased to be moderating this session. I perhaps am biased, but I think this is one of the most interesting and exciting panels of the day. And we have four very creative and innovative, as the title of this panel suggests, speakers and presenters today, who are going to talk about some pretty exciting housing models. As I'm guessing most of you in the room are housing practitioners or housing advocates or have questions or concerns about housing issues. And so, and you've also seen, at least in the state of Georgia, if not beyond, that our families and households are changing. They're different than they were perhaps 5, 10, certainly 20 years ago. And so housing needs are changing as a result of that. And our four speakers today have developed some extremely creative solutions and business models and housing products that they are going to share with you and talk a little bit about today. So they will be speaking and presenting for the first 20 minutes or so. I then have some questions for them as well. But we're hoping that you also have questions for them. And they have answers for you. So this will be an interactive session. We'll get to that point. So please be jotting down some notes as they speak. So if you will look in your program book, we have full bios of each of the individuals here. But I'm going to start to my far right, your far left. We have Jessica Lewis, who is the founder of Houing Enterprises. And next to her, we have Atticus LeBlanc, who is founder of Pad Split. Next to him, we have Will Johnston, who is Executive Director of the Micro Life Institute. And to my immediate right is Derek Barker Jr., who is the principal and founder of Domos Co-Living. So I'm going to start here, Derek, if you're okay going first. I'm going to ask him to talk a little bit about what is Domos Co-Living and what is your product or model like and what housing needs do you see it addressing?
It's a compound question. Is this working? Hello? So Domos Co-Living is a company that kind of in the name develops co-living, both from a ground up perspective, so building purpose-built apartments and communities that are specifically tailored toward individuals who want to live with roommates. In acquisition rehab, so buying current apartment complexes and converting them, apartment complexes and houses, converting them into co-living products. With our ground up, we provide things like utilities and Wi-Fi and utilities, Wi-Fi, shared goods, housekeeping, shared goods like detergent, things like that. And we're able to get a price point that's around 45% cheaper than studios in comparable neighborhoods. In our I guess conversions, our apartment conversion space, similar discount around 30 to 45% discount to market or to national studios. That's largely what we do. The way I guess how we address the affordable market challenges. Right now in Atlanta, somewhere around 30%, give or take, of renters are already living in units, and this isn't something that's new. It's something that's just unprofessional black market. So if you look at someone like myself, I guess I'm a full-fledged millennial. When I graduated from college, I lived with roommates. My wife lived with roommates. All of my roommates in college lived with roommates because that's just the lifestyle that we had. And it's a lifestyle that people are living. When they want to come and work for a new city or for a new job where all the opportunities are. And our cities are just way more expensive than they used to be. And you're graduating with student loan debts that are very high, and wages, at a starting point that have just not kept up. So what we see is that we provide that level of housing for people who are single, who are having kids later in life, people are getting married later in life. I think there's a stat like at 25 in 1960, 75% of 25 or 26-year-olds are married. Now 25% are. And so we have a built environment that was created, and I get out the soapbox. A built environment that was created for, I guess, a type of living that isn't happening anymore. More people are renting, they're renting for longer, and they're wanting to live in cities. And we are addressing that by making and professionalizing that space by creating spaces that are purpose-built and managing it professionally. So as opposed to when I entered the housing market, you have to go on Craigslist and meet somebody, meet a stranger, and you have to take their credit risk and hope that they are, a reasonable person, that they'll pay their bills and not leave you on the hook, and come up with furniture and the like. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that was that's kind of how the space is ran.
Same question for Will. Please tell us a little bit about micro-living.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Will Johnston. I'm the Executive Director of the MicroLife Institute. My elevator pitch of what we do, we educate, advocate, do research, pilot projects, and events all around the micro-built environment. What we consider as the MicroLife as micro-built is everything from that missing middle space, that 1,500 square feet, down to as small as someone feels that they can go. So if they want to build out a 200 square foot space and feel like that is what space they want to live in to propel them forward in life, we are an advocate for that, and we feel that working with different zoning and code laws to change to allow for those types of housing. The project I'm going to be speaking about is our cottages on Vaughn. It is a pocket neighborhood. I love that this is the innovative housing panel, but none of this is new. We did this before. Like in early 1900s, like it was legal to have boarding houses. It was legal to build bungalow alleys and cottage courts. I mean, the idea of us coming up with stricter zoning was basically class systems and unfortunately just saying we want certain people of certain revenue to live in certain areas. So now we're looking at, okay, how can we utilize space better? How can we create that walkable density that so many people, from millennials to retirees, are desiring and looking for? So our model in Clarkston is a pocket neighborhood. We're building 8 houses, all under 500 square feet. 7 of them are 492 square feet. 1 of them is 250 square feet. All of them have storage lofts. The lofts are not included in the entire square space. So again, that's another like 200 square feet on top of the 500 square feet. So we have an interest list of about 300 people ready to buy 8 houses. So what we feel we are doing as a nonprofit developer, we are trying to show developers, communities, cities that they can utilize space differently and better, to build differently, to still give people their single family homes, but in a different way that creates community and drives a stronger bond between the neighborhoods. So we just started construction. We should be finished by end of March, beginning of April, and keep on the lookout for continuing education on Clarkston projects and the cottages on Vaughn.
Thank you. My name is Atticus LeBlanc, and I'm the founder and CEO of PadSplit. I am the founder and CEO of PadSplit. So I'm going to start with a couple pretty controversial statements here. The first is that we as a company believe that the people who work and serve in our communities should also have the opportunity to live in them. That's controversial only because there's a huge portion of the population that doesn't believe that, and our zoning codes don't aspire to that either. The other one is that we think most people want to make more money, right? But at the same time, we need to align incentives between the cashier at your local grocery, the waitress at your favorite restaurant, the barista at the coffee shop, anybody that cleans this office space. Those people should have the ability to live in any community that they choose. But at the same time, we can only do that if we create additional revenue for the people who have properties already in that area. So I'm thankful that Derek is here. He's one of our landlords, actually. And so we service all of the owners across the city and hopefully around the world here in the not too distant future. But effectively what we do is we move strangers in together so that housing can be more affordable for the people who need it most and more profitable for the people who have the property already. How we started was taking this old idea of a rooming house and figuring out, okay, what are the problems? Right? We know that there are a lot of problems. I've been an affordable housing investor and developer here in Atlanta for more than a decade, and I saw all of those problems firsthand. And I said, okay, well, this model is broken. So how do we fix it? how do we take this same concept and bring it into the 21st century the same way that many other companies have done? And the example I usually give is Uber or Lyft for hitchhiking, right? Hitchhiking, generally considered very bad. Uber or Lyft, everybody does it. Why? It's the exact same thing. You're still getting in the back of somebody's car. And so we essentially take this old rooming house concept and bring it into the 21st century and create accountability where we're running background checks on folks, we're doing income verification, and then we're managing the process. We are in the member management business to make sure that we can have strangers live peaceably together, whether they are in an investor's home, or very recently we were launching a pilot program that was just announced last night, where if you have an extra room in your house or a tiny home in your backyard or an in-law suite, you will be able to access our member management services as well as our list of vetted members. And in that way, we'll be able to get anywhere in the city with penetration for those markets. To date, we started just over 2 years ago. In the last year, we've created about 500 new units of affordable housing. Our average income for those residents is $20,900 a year. We know that we're saving those folks about $500 every single month. And if you're doing that math, it's about $2.8 million every year that we're saving folks. We've taken $0 in public subsidy, and the idea is we want to create this marketplace like Airbnb for affordable housing, where people have the ability, when they have extra space, whether they're an investor or a homeowner, to be able to put someone who works in their community into that space.
Not sure if I can follow that. Happy Tuesday, everyone. My name is Jessica Lewis, and I'm the co-owner of Mobile Enterprises. Mobile stands for modular buildings. I actually build residential and commercial structures out of shipping containers. And so what's exciting about a shipping container is that it's waterproof, windproof, and fireproof. And so when it comes to getting insurance, you're probably gonna get whatever you want from the insurance company because they know your house probably isn't going to burn down. Same thing with it being waterproof or wind tight. Typically with the shipping container, you can use it for some of the solutions these gentlemen just mentioned, whether it's an accessory dwelling unit, you add a property onto your already existing home and be able to get Airbnb or rent it out to someone. This may be a primary residence that you want to live in, or it can be a commercial space, which will be your apartment complexes that the gentleman just mentioned. And then more importantly, you can have a place like this. What's great about shipping containers, that they fit together like Lego pieces. And so instead of you trying to figure out where the drywall is going to go and how to put the roof on, that stuff already exists when you purchase a shipping container and reuse it for building structures. And so with that being said, this is a great solution for affordable housing. I also heard that workforce development, building manufacturing plants that can allow for people to work there. And then when it comes to costs, on average, you can start as low as $20,000 for a house that's less than 1,000 square feet. And so with that, I will end because I'm sure you all have questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. And thank you for making the point that these are in large, older concepts that are re-emerging in the housing industry. Question probably most for Derek and Atticus first is, are you most seeing 20s and 30-somethings like yourself, Derek, who are moving into this type of housing, or are you seeing other generations and demographics attracted to living with roommates?
Yeah, so I'll start out with, you probably have a similar story. I mean, no, yes, we're seeing a lot of 20s and 30s. Naturally, there are people who make less money. I mean, the younger people in our society are also the poorest people in our society, and the people that are most like
concepts that are re-emerging in the housing industry. Question probably most for Derek and Atticus first is, are you most seeing 20s and 30-somethings like yourself, Derek, who are moving into this type of housing, or are you seeing other generations and demographics attracted to living with roommates?
Yeah, so I'll start out with, you probably have a similar story. I mean, no, yes, we're seeing a lot of 20s and 30s. Naturally, there are people who make less money. I mean, the younger people in our society are also the poorest people in our society, and the people that are most likely to be single, and so for all those reasons, we do have a lot of people in that age range. But our average resident, I mean, we have people in their 40s, we have people, people who are elderly, who are retired in these spaces. You know, they're wanting to be in an affordable place, wanting to have a sense of community, wanting to be in a location that otherwise wouldn't, you know, it's more expensive, or not your neighborhood, isn't something that is confined to a specific age range. I mean, we are in the United States right now in a loneliness epidemic. People want community, and we build, and so some background, my original family sits out communities, we build communities, and that's been a huge focal point for us even when we were in the traditional apartment business, which we did, several $100 million business, and people respond to that, and that's one of our biggest amenities in COVID. So to answer your question, I said, yes, there are a lot of young people. This is particularly attractive to a lot of young people, but you also have people in your, older people in people in their 40s, people who recently divorced.
Older people.
I was building two separate guys.
So the age range of people that are living with us are from age 2 to 77. Our average age is actually 39.
So do you also find people looking for community, not necessarily, cost may be a factor, but community is also a factor?
It's really interesting. That's been one of the ongoing learnings. I think everybody's looking for something different.
Okay.
We have, and each house kind of builds its own culture. We have some houses where they've lived together for 2 years and still don't really know each other's names, and they just come home and they go to the room and that's it. They just want a quiet place to be at home. They have their social groups outside of home. We have others where there's one designated cook for the entire house. Everybody buys groceries and they all eat together almost every dinner. So it really just depends on, I think, on personal preference. And frankly speaking, we have a long way to go to figure out how do you match those personal preferences, and it's something that we work a lot on, but still have a long way to go.
I actually have a question related to that match process, but we'll come back to that.
Sure.
So, all right. So this one I think is more for Jessica and Will, but when you bring projects or developments to communities, what do you find are the concerns that the neighbors and municipalities have about those weird shipping container houses or 200, 300, 400 square foot homes?
I'll go first. The main thing they care about is the look of the shipping container. They think they're such the ugliest things, and while, yeah, they don't look that exciting, there's ways to get around that. The shipping container does not have to be the shell. You can put bricks, you can put wood slates, you can do whatever you want with it, and so that is the common thing. They think it's the ugliest building on earth, but the thing is, if you get past the exterior and understand the true interior benefits, depending, and so I can take it a step further, they're also concerned about coding, right? How is it built like a traditional home? It's not built any different. So you're saving money on construction, right? And then whatever you put in it is no different than what you would put in a regular house. We do it a little different. We use a lot of green products, hemp wood, things like that. But for the most part, it's no different than how you would build a traditional home. It just takes less time. So let's say it takes 30 to 90 days or something to build a house from the ground up. It takes us 30 days or less. So cost savings, time savings, it's a no-brainer for me. But we're going to pray that someday they adopt it, a little bit more. In my city, and I'm from Macon, Georgia, is starting to slowly give us a little bit of leeway.
I think that's cool.
It's up here, thank you. It's up here in the Atlanta area, but I'm down south. I'm further south, and that look, they've had ordinances and everything. No, they're ugly. You can't have their own mobile homes. They're modular as well. So it's just interesting that they can't see past the look. The benefits to the customer, the community, the county, at state level, it's magnificent, it's huge. If they can just get past looks. Don't judge a book by its cover.
To kind of go off of what you said, it's amazing when we have a judgment of our neighbor and how much that costs us in taxpayer dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we call code enforcement because we see something, then that might put someone out on the streets. The cottages on Vaughn, we're just doing regular stick-built construction, so they are just smaller homes. The issues, I wouldn't say issues, we just have to look at zoning. So we are very organic in the way we approach cities. Usually they come to us. We sit down with them and say, let's go through your cottage court ordinances, or do you have one? Or what about your planned unit development? What variances do you need? What size of land? We also are working in the project's in a holding pattern in East Point. It's the Eco Cottages of East Point, and we have that will be a 40 home micro hood, ranging from about 750 square feet to 1,000 square feet. So again, still very livable. The issue is that it's change. It's new to them, to the community. So adopting practices of constant communication, sitting down with the NIMBYers, the not my backyard people who just don't want anything to change. You have those groups that saying, I like the idea of attainable and affordable housing, but just not in my neighborhood. Let's put it over one neighborhood. Then you go to that neighborhood, they're like, well, I like the idea of affordable housing, but just not in my neighborhood. So it's a constant kick the can down the road. So if we could get over what things look like and actually appreciate people to give them a home and give places to live, we can create much more attainable prices without subsidies. And I think I'm a huge believer in that see, feel, touch. They need to see what a built-out container looks like. They need to see what a built-out pad split home looks like, as well as a pocket neighborhood. The fear is what is destroying progress of the housing, of us to build more housing for everyone. And as the MicroLife Institute, we are trying to just normalize smaller options. We just want to say, like, if you want to live in 200 square feet, you should be able to do it. If you want to be able to build an accessory dwelling unit behind your house and have your mother live there, there's a huge advocacy group from even AARP we partnered with. So many people are getting back to generational housing. We are also kind of bringing in tactics of co-housing where we do want to eat once a week, or at least have there's that concept of third space. Where do people gather in your yard, in the neighborhood? Where do people go to actually get to know each other? Not home, not work, but it's that third space. Is it a coffee shop? Is it a community center? And how do you also incorporate that into your development in a way that allows for community to flourish? Kind of weird. Okay.
I think that was perfect. If I could just add a little bit more, the communal space is what's going to get the buy-in. A lot of people want to feel like they belong, and so these spaces that they're discussing is what allows for you to feel like you have family or friends that you can relate to. So this housing is deeper than just housing. It's actually helping with emotional support, mental support. If you're not around people, sometimes you get depressed and sad. These communities allow for you to be able to at least see somebody once a day if you're walking in and out your house. So it's so much deeper than just trying to find a financial affordable solution for people. People need to know that their neighbors care, there's some kind of connection there. So he's hitting it right on the ball. It solves so many different problems.
And to kind of go back to what the statistics of where we're going in the state of Georgia, Catherine Moore does a great job. She's got a great presentation from Georgia Conservancy that I believe she said 83% of households will be 1 to 2 people in the next 20 years.
Wow.
So you think about that. They don't need the McMansions. One person does not need 3,000 square feet with a 4-bedroom home, unless they're part of pad split or co-housing. So again, if people just open up their doors, we wouldn't have a housing crisis. But yet we want our own space. And if we could show developers that they still can create capitalism and money and revenue by building smaller spaces in a better way that actually helps people build community and not just build a house. I always tell people you have to think beyond the walls of your space. You have to think beyond the walls of your house, whether it be 200 square feet or 5,000 square feet. You need to understand the way you want to live and how you interact with your community. And that's the other work that we need to be doing as affordable housing advocates and developers, because it means that it's so important to think about that third space and how the community grows together.
I'm going to weigh in there too, real quick. Just since you brought it up, so right now the city of Atlanta's committed $1 billion fund to create 20,000 new units of affordable housing. That's the goal over the next 10 years. If you want to create 20,000 units of housing in Atlanta, you could also do it by using just 4% of the existing residential space in the city of Atlanta. You haven't built a single thing, right? Just 4% of the existing residential space. And so you put that in context, like behind door number 1, you can spend $1 billion. Behind door number 2, you can use 4% of existing space. And I think it's both solutions for the record, right? Because the number's not really 20,000; it's actually 120,000. And keeping that in mind, how do you get the most possible? And I think it's definitely a combined approach between all those factors. But you can't ignore one for the other.
So back to that match issue that came up a little earlier. I think my first non-blood related roommate was when I went to school, and I don't think there was a system. They just put two people of the same gender together. I think, schools use more sophisticated systems now, but it's some art and some science. So for Derek and Atticus, if you could talk a little bit about, while it might not be perfect, what kind of methods and systems are you using to match roommates?
Yeah. So today, it's very primitive. I will say that we in the onboarding process we have a cultural interview, and essentially what we're looking for is clean. Can you be clean, quiet, respectful, and can you respect the other people in your house? That's really what we're looking for today, and we have house rules set at each property. We've studied the college roommate matching a lot over the last couple of months as it's become belong to something and belong somewhere. So with that in mind, the best practices what we're trying to go to is each person will fill out their personal living preferences. Are you clean? Are you a smoker? Etc. And allow each person moving into that home to be able to see who the other people are in that home and what their preferences are, so that you can associate. I don't want to speak for all non-smokers here, but in general, what I've seen is non-smokers generally do not want anything to do with living in the same home with a smoker, and that's a very strong preference. Clean and messy people is another one. So at this point, we're collecting a lot of information, but the idea is if we can give them ownership over that decision to feel like they are part of the decision-making process in terms of where they have been placed, then they're more likely to be able to resolve any disputes that occur in the property, as opposed to reporting back to us like, hey, you matched me with the wrong person, which is another issue that a lot of people use.
So what are the options with
They don't get along.
and they don't get along?
Sure.
One says it's fine, one says
So this is
Let
one of
me
the
repeat
reasons.
the question real quick. The question from the front of the room, and I wish I could read your name tag, but my glasses aren't that good. Okay, is that what are the options if a roommate situation or a match isn't maybe a match? What are their?
So today we're fortunate that we have a number of other units that are available, and our agreements are just set up weekly for exactly that reason. So we only require a weekly commitment from someone, so that if they move into a situation they decide this is not a good fit, I don't want to be here, we can offer them other alternatives at really no loss in order to move. There's a nominal transfer fee to cover the cleaning of the room, but in some cases in a situation like that we'll waive that.
So kind of going back to, I love the fact that it was very interesting. My parents always told me this a long time. So that point that a couple of your houses eat dinner together, I think that's so. I don't think people realize what it is about getting around a dining room table and just even if you become family in a way. And we are bringing in those principles when we go into pre-sales for the cottages on Bond. Those 8 homeowners, we will be sitting down to dinner weekly until their house is built. Because I want them to have community and neighborly feelings before they even move in. So how can we also create and challenge developers as they build major communities to start thinking community development and community interaction before anyone moves in. And so it's really creating that safe social space of getting to know each other, get the do's and the don'ts, the likes and dislikes out of the way. So you're like, oh, you know what? Agnes and I, we're going to be wine drinking buddies at 5 o'clock on Fridays. And then, but Bert and I, we're going to do gardening on Sundays at 10 a.m. because we like that. Another thing that we are going to be looking at a permaculture type landscape. So each yard has a different herb or plant that the neighborhood can use. So you're like, oh, Betty's got the sage, Barb's got the rosemary. So again, it allows you to go over to their space, not necessarily stand on their front porch, but you're in the vicinity. The kind of the attributes about pocket neighborhoods is that parking is off to the side, so you have to interact with your neighbor, whether it's a wave. Front porches have to be facing the common area, but designed in a way that you aren't looking into anyone's bathroom or stuff like that. So really thinking through the nesting attributes of how the houses are laid out. There's also degrees of separation. You know, there's the common area, then there's a sidewalk or a path, and then you have maybe a 2-foot tall fence, some gardening, front porch, front door, and then you're inside. So again, it's definitely giving you the space to say, this is my space, that's common space, and over there's your space. It really helps communities a lot when they know they can say, I can wave, I don't have to engage. But as soon as they come off that porch, like, I'm fair game, you know.
Not particularly, other than, you know, most of the difference between this and a college roommate is you did not select that you were gonna live in a communal space. Going to college, they forced you to, and you figured it out. And these are, the difference is this is self-selecting group, that they're saying, you know, right in my life, I want to live with a roommate. Self-selecting that, which is a different pool of people that are going into the situation, and, you know, with willing people coming in the door, and, you know, great operators, figuring things out, people figure it out. You can save 50% or 40% of their living costs, and live closer to where you work.
So I'm seeing many of these concepts in HGTV, TLC, some of the design networks, design magazines are starting to pick up on these alternative or sort of re-concepts for some of these ideas that are coming back around. Are they giving a pretty accurate view? Are they okay? Okay, Jessica.
So when a customer comes to me, they're like, I saw this house on HGTV and I want it. I'm like, okay, tell me more. You know, so I think TV kind of puts a portrayal that is as simple as going to McDonald's, picking off a menu, and riding off. That is not how it is to build a shipping container. There's a lot of logistics involved, from the container movement to having cranes and movement. It's so much involved with it, but you see it on TV, you're like, well, I want that cheeseburger right there. How much is it? And that's the conversations that I have commonly. And unfortunately, I'm big on education, so I scare customers away. And the reason why is because I want to make sure that my customer understands fully what goes into it. When you go to my website, it is content heavy, because I need you to understand what it means to have solar energy, what that means to you, the impact on the environment, understanding the green space, understanding the materials that we use. I need you to understand fully what you're getting into. It's an investment. You know, it's easy to move into a house that just simply was renovated, but to build a house from the ground up, it's way different. You know, it's a lot of personalization in there. You know, people want what they want, that's fine, but anything before it gets to the things they get to choose that they love and stuff with, there's so much that goes into it. And so the unfortunate part is, even with the tiny homes, people think, oh, it really is tiny. Yeah, it is. It really is tiny. You know, it's a lot of misconceptions is what I would like to say. And it's so easy to educate somebody. People that are really wanting these type of living spaces, if you educate them, they'll understand it and they can make more informed decisions. And that's what excites me. When I get a customer that's like, tell me more, what else? And they're just like, and they're really doing their research, or they've come to me knowing everything they need to know. And my website is just a supplement of things that they had already known. That stuff is important. Everything that you see on TV is a glamorization of what we do, basically. Not to make it sound negative, but it's nothing like, I'm sure they all have their experiences, but it's nothing like what you see on TV.
I would agree with that statement. Obviously, it's a double-edged sword when HGTV picks up anything new and makes everyone feel like, oh, I mean, there are literally millions of tiny houses throughout the United States. No, there are not. There are not at all. Just to also clarify, tiny house on HGTV, they did a lot of wheel-based builds. So those are considered recreational vehicles in the state of Georgia.
Right.
So you cannot live in a recreational vehicle in the city limits of most cities in the state of Georgia. You have to either be in a mobile home park or an RV park. You have to be very, again, educational heavy of understanding what you can do with that certain type of structure. Now, the state of Georgia just recently passed the tiny house appendix, not to be confused with the tiny house on wheels. This tiny house is 400 square feet on foundation.
Yeah.
But each city now needs to adopt that appendix that kind of gives you a little more wiggle room around the building code. So you can have narrow hallways, just a different style of ladders to get to a loft. So again, it's slowly coming down the chain, but unfortunately, now every county has to pass it and every city has to pass it. I believe it becomes law when the code updates in 2021. But right now, it's just an appendix, and if we don't do anything now, then it'll just sit there until 2021. Other things, when people were looking at different style of housing that's under, quote unquote, 2,600 square feet, the national average, people don't know how to downsize. It's very scary to give up your stuff. They think we think success means 2-car garage full of crap I don't know what's in there, as well as every bedroom filled to the brim of antiques and every relative who passed along things. So we have stuff. And so I have to say, I've done this. Like, I have downsized from a 2-bedroom condo to nothing, to a 10 by 10 storage facility. And it's very heavy. So everyone's saying, I want a better life, but it is a process. I mean, whether to move into just a bedroom, that's a downsize. To move into a shipping container of, what's an average size of a shipping container, 350?
120 to 320.
Yep, so, and then our average is like around 500 square feet. I still want you to see what 500 square feet feels like, because the aha moment will happen. But when you have a 5,000 square foot house, what do you do with that stuff?
I want to slightly disagree here, because a lot of people aren't downsizing. I mean,
That's true.
Like, if I just look at a lot of people that I know, have never bought furniture, never want to buy furniture. Like, they're, when you are young, you move through opportunity, and that is just a reality. You don't have, a lot of people haven't been able to accumulate stuff. A lot of people haven't been able to, we get a lot of people, both in our traditional apartment complexes and in our co-living spaces, that are moving. This is their first household. This is their first household outside of mom's house. This is their first household not with other roommates. Or, this is not their first household, but, I'm moving from, I graduated from Vandy. I lived there for 2 years. I'm moving back to Atlanta, and I don't want to fill up a moving container full of furniture that I got 3 years ago at IKEA that's probably cheap anyway. There's a huge, and this might be something that's generational, but a lot of people aren't downsizing. A lot of people think of having stuff as being a burden.
And I guess that's where the people I'm thinking of are the baby boomers who keep saying, when are you building more homes? Yeah. So the ones that are looking for that generational housing to build a 800 square foot ADU in the backyard, they're the ones that want to sell their 2,000 square foot house and move closer to family. So I guess it's kind of going back to being able to make sure there's more options and products out there that people could downsize to.
Because I guess the baby boomer, I have a single family house, that is the stereotypical American.
Yeah.
But that's not who needs housing. There's a crisis in this country. There's a crisis in this city. There's a crisis all around us of housing. And the people who are in that crisis are not just the baby boomers who have 5,000, 2,000 square foot houses. You know, that's who people want to see. That's what a lot of you all are. And that's what a lot of people, we're going to talk to a lot of people who are financing these projects. That's why we have the system we have, is because the people who are financing these projects are those people. They're the baby boomers who have the 2,000 square foot house. That's not where the crisis is. And the thing is, we need to start thinking that there are people out there who are not us, who need housing. And we need to be creating housing for them. We need to be creating spaces for them. Because that is our future. That's our present. Those are our workers. Those are the people who push this economy forward. And right now, we as a society are counting on a few people up here to try to move and shift the entire built environment, but it's on every single one of us to move and shift the built environment, even by doing something as simple as not saying, oh, well, not in my backyard. And something about this whole NIMBYism and not in my backyard thing, I mean, this is not something that's new. Co-living is something that we've been doing since caves. When we were in caves, we were co-living in caves. The reason why, co-living was popular until the 1920s. Why until the 1920s? Because the Supreme Court in the 1920s made it was illegal to have race-based covenants. And so that's how single-family housing as the code really exploded, because Black people couldn't afford single-family houses. And so, we are really, right now, we are living with a system that was distorted purposefully, and we have a responsibility for our future, for the future of our children, for the future of our economy, for our present, to change that system that we distorted. So,
You're not voting for president, guys.
No, very helpful. Hang with questions. First of all, I'm disappointed to find out that HGTVs, it doesn't really happen in half an hour.
The real world is
And
not
problems
real.
free, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry to do
I gotta
it.
reckon with that. But I did want to do a plug for all four of these entrepreneurs have really great websites and social media outlets which have both educational videos, information, because I think all of you have talked about this as an educational process. Entrepreneurs have really great websites and social media outlets which have both educational videos, information, because I think all of you have talked about this as an educational process, but also the visuals that go with making the Legos,
Puts the Legos together, right?
yeah, how the Legos really can go together and be incredibly beautiful. And what you can do, while it's a reckoning, what you can do with 500 square feet or 400 square feet. So do check out their sites for sure. Other comments from you before I open it up to some questions from our audience?
I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of both of what you all said, because creating innovative housing doesn't have to have a genre of people. It could be for millennials, it could be for baby boomers, and everybody in between. If you have a housing solution that solves a problem, it really could be for anybody. Again, it's about thinking outside of the box, and that's what we do, innovation, right? But more importantly, the legislation is the issue. It's really hard. So I live in Middle Georgia. It's really hard to get things done just because of our ordinances down there. I was happy to see that houses there were duplexes, triplexes. I drove all around the land. I said, oh my God, shipping containers everywhere. Restaurants, cafes. I thought that was exciting, right? And then when I went to my city, I said, well, wait a minute. There's literally 2 shipping containers in my city, and there's 1 tiny home, and they just built 8 tiny homes that's supposed to solve this homeless problem. I don't know how 8 houses, and it took them a year to build it, but we're not going to go there. But the point that I'm trying to make is, you all are here and y'all want to understand what it is that we do, right? Part of this process is when you guys leave here. Leave here and become more informed about other ways to improve your communities through innovative housing. We're actually building a tiny home community in Macon, and what's exciting about that, there will be permaculture, aquaponic, we'll have fishing opportunities, we'll have adult and children's playgrounds. So all of these things that will bring more people closer to each other is what will be in our tiny home communities. My specialty really is development, guys. I don't do a lot of renovations. We usually build from the ground up. We go to disaster areas and build. So it's so many different ways that shipping containers really can solve a lot of issues. Tiny homes can solve a lot of issues. These co-working spaces, they're solutions to heavy problems that are not just here in the United States. I've traveled all over the world. These issues are everywhere, but we are providing a solution. So go home and tell people that we exist, you know? Go to your legislation, like Esquire spoke about earlier. Talk to people about these opportunities because it doesn't have to be the end. And the appendix is one thing, but go to your people, all your local politicians, and encourage them to adopt the appendix, no matter where you live. It doesn't have to be in the Atlanta area. Tell a friend to tell a friend. You know, if we don't get the word out, because it's so new to the United States, I guess it's, you go to other countries, they've been building sports complexes and stadiums and all kinds of fancy stuff for years with containers and all these things, but we're just catching up. We're a little behind. And so the way to improve all of that is for us to go home and talk about it every chance we get. So.
One last thing to add, I think particularly given the makeup of the room here, I would ask people to think about this not just as a housing problem or a housing shortage. It's about housing, it's about employment, it's about housing plus transportation, how far you have to live from your place of work. And it's about supportive services and the creation of a continuum where there are a huge number of people in this region who are working full-time, sometimes 2 jobs that are homeless. Fact. And there's not a way today for those people to move through a supportive agency career development program into independent housing. And right now there's a massive gap which we think we can start to fill between that supportive housing and a studio that costs around $1,000 here in Atlanta. But all of us in here are part of that ecosystem in making it work, whether you are a social service provider, a job training program, a staffing agency, an employer, or even just someone who's active in your neighborhoods. About thinking through the life cycle of how does someone move through that continuum realistically, and what are the things that have to happen to make it true, and what are the other problems that are related. I mean, there was a study that came out recently for Buckhead workers. They said traffic has increased 76% in the last 10 years. No coincidence that 92% of the people that work in Buckhead live outside of Buckhead, right? And so if they had affordable housing there, they wouldn't have nearly the same traffic problem that they do. I think that's something that's very important for us to think about as we're sitting in traffic at 9 a.m. or 6 p.m. or pretty much any time.
Yeah.
anytime with an connector. But there are lots of different angles to address some of these same issues, and they're really important.
I think another thing is, I guess, we need to look at, and obviously we address policy and zoning and looking at how we can streamline opportunities for building, but also the cost to build. I get yelled at by a lot of people, like, we are trying to make the pocket neighborhood as attainable as possible. And we're still and we're not even getting a fee for our services, and we're still at around $120,000. So I get almost to the level of death threats of, how dare you? Like, this should be like $40,000. And I'm like, well, it's basic economics of how you build something, because I have to pay the same sewer tap fees as a 4,000 square foot house as I do as a 400 square foot house. I have to pay the same permit fees for each house. So how can we, as a society, be more creative with our laws and streamline the building process, whether it be modular, being able to recognize the moments that need to add to our housing stock versus just, oh, you're trying to make a quick buck. We need that ability to help get these, I hate calling them products, because you know what? Everyone wants a home. Everyone needs a space that helps them feel comfortable, safe, and can help them propel themselves forward. And I would say, I don't even know what percent of America is tied up in always thinking of it as a portfolio. I don't think of my house as a portfolio. It's my home. It's where I survive. It's where I come for a respite. And I think a majority of Americans don't think like that. So how do we get back to getting the homes to be a home and actually help them versus it's part of their portfolio?
Okay.
I don't have much other than, show up, and one voice can make a big difference, especially at these local events, when, people are trying to get their permitting change.
Yeah.
But I just would love to answer any questions if there are any out there.
Okay. All right. Speak up. We'll get you on.
I'm gonna move over here because I can see you all now. So my name's Sarah Stein. I'm a lawyer. I work at Atlanta Legal Aid. And I had questions mostly for Atticus and Derek. Just thinking about, well, two things. First of all, wondering, so you guys have people apply and you talk about your process or you vet people. Do you have mechanisms for tracking who is not making it through your vetting process? Like who's being, hi. Do you have processes for tracking who's being excluded from your vetting processes? And if you do, like, would you be frank with us about who is it? Who's not being served by your product, by your solution?
Yeah, so some of it depends on what happens to be available at any given time. There are two reasons. Most of the people that apply are approved, and it's around 80%, 85% or so. The exclusions today are, number one, for criminal histories, so no felonies within the last 10 years, no violent or sexual felonies ever. We have offered to white box our product for some of those recidivism programs that are interested in reentry. That's a really hard case for us to make when we're going to a neighborhood to say, hey, we don't have these levels of exclusions. Not to mention if we're talking about renting a room in someone's home. And so that's kind of the line that we drew and felt was still marketable. The other one would be for income. So if you're on fixed income, it's 1.5 times the monthly dues. It's actually weekly dues, but usually we calculate income on a monthly basis. And then if you're working, it's 2 times those dues.
Oh, and I just have a quick follow-up question. What happens when somebody can't pay?
Sure. So it's a great question, and it's one of the reasons why those social support agencies are so important. What we try to determine is someone truthful, and are they trying? And if they're truthful and they're trying, we'll work with them. We have a great relationship with First Step Staffing, so if someone's lost a job, we can be able to get them a job within the next 48 hours. Right now, our housing costs about $20 per day, and so it doesn't take a lot of work to be able to cover that expense. But the reality is, unfortunately, that yes, sometimes it doesn't work out for people for whatever reason.
And do you have to go through an eviction process, or what is your process for removing
so
someone who hasn't paid?
So this is another part of the evolution of this entire ecosystem. And right now, the way that landlord-tenant law is written in Georgia, pretty much any state, there is no distinction made between a person who presents an imminent danger or a threat to the other people in that environment relative to the person who just lost the job, right? And we think those two cases are very different. And one of the things that we try to seek is the discretion to figure out what are those two cases. Because we've had, unfortunately, maybe 10 cases or so where that person is actively threatening the other roommates in their house or has demonstrated that they are incapable of living with others. And we need to act on those situations much more quickly than in a situation where, okay, Joni lost her job and she needs support. So we need the ability to run those two tracks simultaneously. So as a result, one of the reasons like today in Georgia, we operate under the innkeeper's exclusion. And because we're furnished, because we include all utilities, Wi-Fi, that's how we run. But what we're seeking is there needs to be something that exists between a typical eviction process and innkeeper's law. And today there's nothing. It's this chasm of stuff between there. But there needs to be some level of discretion. And so what we do is we end up paying for a lot of hotel rooms, honestly. Because you know that somebody needs to go somewhere, but you don't want to put them out on the street and make sure they have soft landing.
Do you have that like contractually with your members? Do you provide protections contractually to people that they wouldn't be having under the innkeeper?
Yeah, so today, no. What we're trying to do is create an advisory board. So I'm meeting with the Atlanta Volunteer Legal Foundation. We've already had one meeting. I'm meeting with them on Friday. And we try to assemble a group of people like yourself that understand these issues, as well as the supportive housing providers who have seen the same issues take place in environments where you have people who are recently homeless or have been homeless chronically for a long period of time and have significant mental health issues and need other supportive services. And to get those people around a table to say, okay, here are the real cases that we've done. And to be completely transparent around, here's how we think that we would have done it. And you tell us, do you think this is reasonable or not? And from those conversations and from those policy advisors, be able to say, here's what we think should happen. And this is the right way to do it. Because it's really important for us, at the end of the day, that we're on the side of good. Okay? And I don't think leaving someone who has threatened their roommates in a situation like that is necessarily meets that same standard in the same way that putting somebody out on the street without any support meets the standard either, right? And so how do you come together as a community of people who really understand the issues at the ground level and craft a policy that makes sense and then adopt it through statewide legislation or what have you? That's what we would want to happen. And what we're trying to formulate today, and the reason why I make a call for social service providers is because these people understand, and I'm sure you understand. You hear these stories that are very painful of people who have been evicted. And at the end of the day, even through the eviction process, if we're just putting people out with no safety net, like who's really served in that scenario? And what doesn't exist is this ecosystem or the continuum of care where, okay, this person needs a job and that's one set of services. This person needs mental health service and that's another set of services. This person just needs another place to go, and maybe not so much with other people. And to be able to determine there are personalized solutions for each one of those cases. But you need to be able to have stakeholders, and we need to be transparent as an organization with people like yourself to say, look, this is real talk, right? These are real issues and real people, and we need to figure out the best solutions possible.
Thanks.
I'm hoping there's a business card exchange that happens. All right, so I hand over here.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Dana Redden. I'm the owner of Solar Concierge, so solar for affordable housing. I'm here to understand the market a little bit more. And Atticus, good to see you. We knew each other from Rotary back in the day. I appreciated Will mentioning the fact that this is nothing new. Back, in America, when we had more of that wealth divide, as we're seeing now, these solutions popped up. And I'm interested in understanding a little bit more about how your solutions solve the problems that back in the day those solutions perpetuated. For instance, the strains on infrastructure, when you start putting more density in neighborhoods, the resale value of tiny homes, what does that look like? The ability to get financing, let's say, for a tiny home, and then abuses from unscrupulous developers. We've seen that with flips. So I'd just love to understand how you're innovating and solving those historical problems with these market-based issues.
Right, and you said you're with solar?
Yes.
We are going to be putting solar on our project as well. So
That's wonderful.
So I guess the first thing is talking about money. Banks are willing to loan. We are able to show that there are comps in, again, a 500 square foot range. So they are able to get a standard mortgage loan, construction loan to build their house. So we are working with Wells Fargo, PNC, Bank South, and Citizens Trust. Again, this is our first project that we're actually, shovel in the ground doing. So those are other conversations that I need to have with banks that addressing the accessory dwelling unit. So if you want to build an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard, you either have to have $150,000, just as we all do, right? Or you have to refinance your house to be able to build it and take the equity out of your house. So smaller structures, I think also there's a stigma, like if you live in a smaller space, like, you're down on your luck, or people say, it's gonna become a slum. Anyone, as we know, cannot take care of a piece of property. So whether it be a big house or a small space, I do believe it's how you build that community and kind of when there is gonna be an HOA, so there's accountability on the pocket neighborhood, in the pocket neighborhood. So, you know, everyone pays into the HOA for sewer, electric, water, but then also has to agree to the bylaws. So there is that level of accountability, because I think you just need a little. We're not trying to make it the most expensive HOAs, but it definitely allows people to feel like they can communicate saying, hey, Frank, you know, you really shouldn't have your exercise bike out on your front porch. I mean, you moved into a small space for a reason, you know, you need to get rid of it. So I think kind of addressing like, you know, what this does for back in the day, I guess kind of what you asked. It does create that density and walkability, and that shared, kind of that shared economy that we're all, you know, we're so used to getting into a stranger's car now, it's like, I don't think anything of it. But, you know, how do we share stuff with our neighbors in a group community tool shed or something like that? So it is trying to create that higher level interaction that does drive a better bond with their neighbors and the community. I think also something like, I kind of asked, like, who would you be if you didn't have to worry about a big mortgage? What money would you save? How would you participate in the community more? Who would you be? Would you go after a different job? So if we're able to create that housing stock that allows you as an individual to pursue the person you actually want to be, I think society will be better. Now, have I hit everything?
What about accessibility, like the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Oh, they could be ADA compliant, easily, down to 350 square feet.
And if I may add, from the shipping container perspective, finance-wise, it's very hard to get a mortgage for a shipping container because of the obvious reason. People think it's just a box. And so that's a common challenge for people that come to me. They normally have to get a loan someplace else and pay for the building out in cash. As far as the space, 20, 30, 40 square feet for the 40-foot cube has 120, 220, 320 square foot living space. And so when you put them together to address the size, they can be as big or as small as you want them to be. The largest residential home we built is probably 3,200 square feet. It can get as large as you would like it. They could have added one more house, one more container, and made it a little larger, so you can build them out how you like. They're stackable, or they can go side by side. We cut them in big glass windows. They can be as luxurious or as plain and simple as you want. And then when it comes to accessibility, again, these houses can have elevators in them. They can have handicap accessible bathrooms and entrances. So to address the needs of a different kind of person, a shipping container is a great option. The products that we use inside the home is great for people who are allergic to traditional building material. There's a whole group of people who cannot live with drywall and wood or any of that. And so what we use inside the house is green. And so it reduces allergens in the air. It helps, of course, even without a solar panel, it's very good because it still reduces your energy. You know, the container is going to hold the heat or hold the cold, whatever you want it to be, it's going to do. And so in conjunction with the materials that we use inside the home, it actually supports what the container's use is for it to be water, wind, and fireproof. And so the container itself has a lot of great solutions. Again, if someone's open-minded to understanding that, it's an educational process, but it can solve a lot of problems.
Hi, thank you all for coming. This is probably one of the most interesting panels I've been to in the last 2 months. I've been to conferences. I had a couple of questions. The first question is legal status in the United States required to rent the pad split and the homes? Do you look at that? Also, I think somebody mentioned that there was a 4%, oh, Atticus, maybe you said this, that 4% of the homes now can be converted to add a roommate or, you know, be a partner with pad split. And my question regarding that is, how can seniors benefit from homes that they currently live in that are paid for, if they're getting redlined and insurance being dropped, to fulfill that 4%? Because I top of mind, I can think of 3 people that have a home, they could use the extra income, you know, but they may need some repairs done. So I didn't know if there was availability of funds to do that or what.
So I'll answer the second question first. I may need to repeat that first question again. But so the 4% number is based on the fact that every man, woman, and child in Atlanta today uses about 590 square feet. And so just optimizing 25 square feet per home gets you to 20,000 new units based on what we know someone actually needs in terms of square footage gross square footage in an existing home. So it's not that you only have 4% of the homes that fit. And as part of the pilot program, we will absolutely, I mean, that's a big part of the target market, is those empty nesters and seniors who are on fixed income who could benefit from additional income, as well as potentially some value-added services around the home. And so we absolutely think that that's a big opportunity there. In terms of how you fund those, I think it's a different question. I would suspect there are foundations. My old contracting company actually works with a number of them to do work on seniors' homes, and I would imagine you can probably leverage some of those programs. I haven't really talked with anybody in the city, but I think it's probably a worthwhile conversation for figuring out how they can remain in their homes and continue to pay off their insurance or whatever bills they might have around the house. And your first question was,
Are you all looking at people's status?
Oh, yeah, so de facto we are. I mean, I would love to be able to say that we're not, but the reality is we run a background check using a social security number. So you can do that with an A number if somebody has an alien number. But the reality is, I think most immigrants probably, or most illegal immigrants probably don't. But if you have a green card, then obviously that's a necessary qualification. So in those cases we do have some immigrants and foreign students at least who have rented with us. But yeah, it's something I've grappled with. We haven't run into it a lot, frankly, but I think we will when we're in California or Texas even.
Yeah, so you have to have some kind of.
Yeah, you need some sort of verification process, and I don't know what that is.
Atticus, also something, and I can't remember what the definition is of what a family is in a home in Georgia. That's something that you and I have been discussing, because you can only have, I mean, something else, I don't know if you've heard, but people are calling it the golden girl effect as well for senior citizens, of just thinking being able to rent out rooms. But you can only, is it 2 or 1 that is not related that you can stay in your house? And that's something else that we have to look at for policy, because we have a rule that only X amount of non-family members can live with you. So, Atticus, I think
city by
probably,
city.
yeah.
It's city by city. Atlanta is actually still pretty progressive. I think in large part because, as Derek alluded to, a lot of the codes result from racism back to 1917 with the Buchanan ruling. But in Atlanta, it's up to 6 unrelated persons plus 4 boarders occupying no more than 2 rooms. In Cobb County, it's up to 2 unrelated people, period. So it depends jurisdiction by jurisdiction what it is, but it's more than enough to help offset the costs for seniors living on fixed income.
And if I could add to that, I think we talked about accessory dwelling units a little bit earlier. So if you aren't familiar with the term, it's when you pretty much add an extra house onto your land. And what's great about that is that can be an additional source of income. You can rent it out to any of these, I guess, scenarios that was described today. And the way that financing will go with that is someone probably could do a home equity line of credit or some other tap into equity that they may, especially if they're a senior, if they own their home. That's another way that they can build their house right on their land and they'll get that extra source of income. So that's another creative way to look at the already existing space that they own.
Well, it is 11:44. We are scheduled to start lunch at 11:45. But before you head towards that lunch, if you would please help me thank our 14 If you learned something new different or that you want to try when you get home, if you'll just raise your hand, we can get an idea.
Wow, that's
All
great.
that good stuff, yeah. So thank you all
Thank you.
four of you. If you did not get a chance to ask a question, if a panelist maybe can stay.
Yeah, I'll stay for you
Okay,
guys.
great. So, they'll be here a few more minutes, or those who can, will maybe stay a few more minutes. But thank you for choosing innovative housing solutions. Maybe they aren't as innovative as we originally built them to be, but.
It's not new, it's not new.
But thank you all, and
Thank
thank
you,
you for
guys.
being here.